Call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. First item of business tonight is roll call.
Miller? Rosado? Beck? Here. Connolly?
Here.
Chanzit?
Here.
Silva?
Here.
Wolf?
Here.
Barron? Here. Lehman?
Here.
Ayazi?
Here.
Malay?
Here.
Ewer?
Here.
Sabrone?
Here.
And Vogelsinger?
Here.
I have 12 out of 14.
Thank you. And up next would be a reminder to please speak directly into the microphone. If you come up, just adjust the microphone to your height so we can get that on the broadcast. Item 3 would be approval of minutes for November 29th, 2022, December 13th, 2022, January 24th, 23, January 10th of 23. Those would be the ones we have for tonight. Any comments or corrections or anything on any of those? Not, could I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Sofa, second by Malay. Roll call, please.
Silva?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Barron?
Aye.
Lehman? Ayazi?
Aye.
Malay?
Aye.
Ewer?
Aye.
Sabrone?
Aye.
Vogelsinger?
Aye.
Miller?
Present.
Rosado? Beck?
Aye.
Connolly?
Aye.
And Chanzit?
And reply.
Chanzit? Aye. Thank you. 13-0.
Let the record reflect Alderman Miller showed up at 7:04. Okay, next would be items that are removed, added, or changed for this evening. Alderman Malay.
Yeah, Alderman Wolf, I would request that item number 7, the discussion on the Gun Safety Consortium, be removed from the agenda in light of the email we just received today and memos.
Does anybody else have any items to be removed, added, or changed at this point? Okay, and then I guess we will try to reschedule that once we have more information from what we got from today.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Do you have an idea of when you would like to see it on the agenda next? 2 weeks?
Not at this time. I'd like to talk to some others.
Okay. So I'll wait to hear when next it's requested to be put onto an agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, up next then would be item number 5 for matters from the public for items not on the agenda. And there's nobody online. All right, then we'll move on to item number 6, which is discussion on the Carriage Crest pumping options report update with V3. See, Gary is already on his way up there.
Does the top left button work there?
There we go. Also, last time that staff was here before you, have any storm
Gary?
sewer option?
Your microphone's not on yet.
Thank you.
Sure, it's on.
There we go. It was green light when I stood up here. I'll start over. If everyone recalls, the last time staff was here, we were presenting V3's preliminary study of a gravity sewer, which was from the basin, which is shown on the screen, heading east towards the river. And the reason why we had come back to you at that time was that V3's preliminary cost estimate was about $6.8 million for that gravity sewer. And if you take 3 steps back, if you recall, the original gravity sewer concept was estimated to be in the range of $3.5 to $4 million. So given the cost increase, we felt it was very important to come back to City Council. And at that time, City Council directed us to explore a pumping option. And that is what we are here tonight to present the results of V3's analysis of a pumping option. I'm going to start actually on page 4 of their report. Their entire report was included in the council packet and online. So if anyone wants to reference the report, it is available on the city's website. And I normally would not sit here and read verbatim, but I think page 4 is key information to get us started tonight. And then I'll go into some of the other information presented in the report. So first of all, with regards to the pumping option, the heading is System Operation and Benefits. And it's an important consideration when assessing the proposed pump station that you compare that to the relative performance of the existing drainage system. So the Carriage Crest watershed is unique in that the existing granular soil increases the risk to residents from subsurface water that must be continuously pumped from basement sump pumps during all storm events. So, if everyone recalls, this basin was designed when the subdivision was originally built with no outfall and was designed to infiltrate into the ground. And I don't know why or what the thinking was back then. Certainly that would not be allowed today. But by doing that, we have had obviously problems over the years with numerous homes experiencing basement sump pump issues, basement flooding issues, other drainage related issues. So that's how the existing basin works today. And that needs to be kept in mind as we talk about the pumping options. Excuse me. Again, under existing conditions, stormwater runoff is conveyed via storm sewers and overland flow to the park storage basin, where it is allowed to infiltrate into the subsurface soil. Stormwater that can't immediately infiltrate is stored above ground until infiltration capacity is available, essentially until it all soaks into the ground. There's no mechanical pumping, no gravity outfall of the stormwater from the park, except during the most extreme events. And since I've been here, I've only been here since 2008, but I know we first pumped starting back then. So literally for the last decade plus, the city has taken out its pumps to begin pumping the basin during the most extreme events. And that has only been a handful of times over the years, maybe a half dozen different times. And when that pumping has occurred, it typically doesn't begin until the following morning. So, after the storm has completed, and when we've been out there, it's typically been 24 to 36 hours of continual pumping before the basin is even dried, or before we can really no longer pump out of it because the water levels are so low. During all that time period, from when the rain started until when we're done pumping during those extreme events, residential sump pumps must keep up with continual flow of groundwater until eventually the system, goes down to a level where the sump pumps are able to turn off. So that, and all the neighbors can vouch for the fact that that's how it works today, that they see water virtually almost every storm, but during those extreme events, they see water how I just described it. So now we're looking at this pumping option, and how will that change things? So under the proposed conditions of a pumping option, if that's the option that's ultimately selected, stormwater runoff will continue to be conveyed to via storm sewer and overland flow to the basin. It will be evacuated via mechanical pumping rather than infiltration into the soil. There'll be a clay layer installed, so throughout all of the city's parcels. So the city doesn't own over here, this is Park District, but the city does own roughly where all the wooded area is, roughly. And so the wooded area, that's to be stressed that the wooded area, all the trees would have to come out, and we would excavate and install a clay liner, a 1 to 2 foot thick layer of clay, compacted clay, to essentially stop infiltration. Now, no clay liner is 100% impervious, but the goal is to greatly minimize infiltration. So the proposed clay liner will hold the storm water in the basin and will not allow it to infiltrate. Mechanical pumping will begin as soon as the storm water begins to flow into the basin. And then mechanical pumping will continue until the basin is fully evacuated. And again, if you recall under my existing conditions, when mechanical pumping occurs, it typically doesn't occur until we get out there, which is still several hours after the storm event has started, if not even the next morning. So under the proposed conditions, mechanical pumping will begin immediately, and the clay soil will prevent infiltration. 2 key things. The modeling shows that an expected drain down time of 24 hours or less for the more common storm events under alternate 2, and the peak water service level for larger storm events may not be appreciably lowered, but again, we are not allowing the water to infiltrate, and we're pumping it out. And so even though the water may still reach the same level in the basin, the clay liner will prevent infiltration and therefore minimize impacts to adjacent basements. So those are the key differences. I will call your attention to the chart on page 4, and I'll bring up the June 15 storm because that's kind of one of our milestone storms that we've talked about. For the June 15th storm, alternate 2, and I'm going to go back and I'll go through the alternates and I'll go through the costs. But alternate 2 is estimated about 18 hours of drawdown time. And my memory serves, and I asked Bill Kellum, we were in that 24 to 36 hour range. So almost twice mechanically pumping the way we were pumping. And everybody needs to remember that even though we were mechanically pumping for almost twice the amount of time, all the residents were pumping with their own sump pumps during that whole time too. So that's why it's considerably different, the mechanical pumping option. Okay, so I mentioned alternate 2. What is alternate 2? First of all, there's 2 routes proposed. I'm going to go back to the beginning here. V3 has now looked at 2 different routes. They've looked at a route 1, which heads off to the west and into into Brayburn Marsh. And then they looked at route number 2, which once the screen refreshes, is again off to the east and towards the Fox River. V3 has noted that if we choose route 1, we may have issues downstream with, I keep calling it Carriage Cross, downstream with Brayburn Marsh, and that we may not be able to pump during certain time periods because water levels downstream may restrict our pumping ability. V3 and staff are both recommend, we wanted them to look at this option, but we both kind of reached the conclusion that this is not the better of the 2 alternate routes. We feel that route number 2, going to the east to the river, which then will not have any restrictions on when we can pump, is the better routing. Now there is also alternate 1 and alternate 2, a smaller pump station versus a larger pump station, an 8-inch force main or a 10-inch force main, and that's just the diameter of the pipe that the pumps will pump into. And staff is certainly recommending alternate 2. The cost difference between the two alternates, as shown on page 3 of the report, isn't that significant. So we certainly would recommend the larger pump station, larger capacity pump station, and a larger diameter force main. All right. So now I want to get into costs. And really this is on page 3 of the report. This would be for what we call a triplex component concrete stormwater pump station. That's a technical term for basically a big circle manhole, which is a big sump that'll have 3 pumps in it. The ability to run 2 pumps at any one time, so that you always have a spare, and they cycle between the 3 pumps. And the pumps have what we call variable frequency drives, so that during low flows, it's kind of like a dimmer switch on your house. The old-fashioned, the kind where you used to turn the knob and the lights would go up and down before modern dimmer switches. That's what a VFD does, is it'll throttle up and down the motors so that they can run accordingly to how much water flows into the structure. So that's what we're talking about as far as, what the pumping would be. We would envision it going and being a part of the existing structure that's out there already for the sanitary lift station. That lift station was built with the notion or with the thought that one day we may put stormwater into that lift station. So we left an extra bay for electrical equipment. We have room on the outside of the building for additional electrical equipment. We need to run in-house to make that generator, we kind of have done back of the napkin sketches. The generator is right on the edge of being capable just the way it is today, as not needing a new generator. We'll have to verify that during the final engineering design process. Again, back in 2011, when we built that sanitary lift station, we didn't know what size pumps we were going to need, so we did pretty good, I think. The electrical infrastructure is already all there. So a lot of the pieces are already there for also having a stormwater lift station there. We did that all back in 2011. If you go way back on page, well, it's in the appendices, V3 did put together cost estimates of the various options, and all of those cost estimates include $100,000 for regular operations, maintenance, and repair. That's just a generic line item. That's not obviously a construction cost, but that is a cost for routine maintenance and repair during the life cycle of the pump station. And I'll go back to the other page here to talk about life cycle costing. But then for the larger pump station itself, just the pump station, so not anything else, all the electric infrastructure, the piping, the force main, all of that, assume that's already all in place. If you need to replace the pump station one day in 2023 dollars, that'd cost you $1.1 million. All right, so let's look at overall costs now. Alternate 2, the larger of the pump stations, Route 2 towards the river is estimated at $3.9 million. That cost again includes $100,000 for R&M life cycle costing. That also includes the underdrain system. So I spoke of the basin, removing all the trees and installing a clay liner. What I didn't mention earlier was that there will be also a piping underdrain system under the clay liner. That underdrain system will be approximately at elevation 701. And just for reference, the basement of 1075 Parkview is at elevation approximately 704. So the underdrain system is intended to collect groundwater below the clay liner and to have it drain away by gravity into this pump station, into this stormwater lift pump station. So it's not water. The intention is not to have water go through the clay liner. The intention of the underdrain is to collect the water that naturally exists under the clay liner, groundwater. So $3.9 million for alternate 2, Route 2. And the question was asked, is this, and remember the gravity option was 6.8 million. So not quite double the cost, but close to double the cost. The question was asked, what about life cycle costing? Even though this is a lot less expensive on the front end, is it less expensive overall? And we did a rough analysis based on 2023 dollars. So everything in present day dollars. And I pointed out to you before the cost of replacing the pump station itself. So the pumps, the controls, everything that's going to need to be replaced in 30 years when they reach their end of their life cycle. And based on 2023 costs, and if I go out 30 years and replace the 1.1 million, go out another 30 years and replace another 1.1 million, and obviously costs will increase. We're doing this all in 2023 dollars. That's why it's kind of a rough estimate. This gravity option becomes less expensive at approximately the 100-year mark. Now, in reality, there'll be cost increases. There'll be other things that have to be changed out. So I would probably feel more comfortable telling you somewhere between, say, 70 years and 100 years, the gravity is going to cross over. It's going to be a significant amount of time. It will not be less expensive in 20 years from now. It's going to be another lifetime. And I'll argue that 70 or 100 years from now, we don't know if these homes will even be there. That's just, just the reality of what's going to happen in another 100 years.
50 years, we could have a stormwater utility that's forced upon us that we have to take that water from there and not put it in the river, but put it through a treatment plant.
Maybe.
That's also something we don't even know.
So my best analysis based on what we have so far is that life cycle costing, the pumping option would still be less expensive than the gravity option up through at least probably 70 years. Potentially the crossover may not even occur all the way out to 100 years, but again, I'd rather be more conservative. I think I've covered all of the highlights that I wanted to touch on. Yes, let me open up to questions and something will probably pop in my head.
That's the first question I have is because we get beat up on it every time we take a tree out. How clear cut is that going to end up being when we do the liner? Are we going to take everything out?
I would assume at this moment we would take out every tree on the city's property.
Okay. Because I think that's something we have to be prepared for what we do to reforest that or how we reforest that, because that's going to be part of the, that's going to be a big deal when that happens.
It's been a while since I've been out there. I don't believe there are majestic oaks out there. I think it's more.
But it's a block. It's
blockage. It's wildlife. It's quietness. It's shade.
It will change the neighborhood if that gets clear cut. So
if I was a little boy, I would love to play out there.
When we do this.
So yeah.
Yeah, bouncing off of what Alan is saying, I know some of those houses are built with that, their decks are backed up to that
privacy.
Beautiful forest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We can all, but is that just going to be a collection basin? Is that
It's what it was always intended to be from day one, and it is today. It functions as a collection basin. It just, there's no outfall pipe.
Reforest it. Is that the plan?
Well, you wouldn't want to plant trees because you want to keep the clay liner from the roots would grow through
So it would just become open
grass.
Open basin. Okay.
Yeah, it would look just like an extension of the park, basically.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about this for a long, long time, and I think it's something that we have to come to grips with how we're going to do this and, move forward and get this done. And I do like the idea that there is both, when I was reading through that there is the under piping in there, because that, even if that is a big retention pond, you're still going to get groundwater around it, no matter what.
Well, it's already been shown there's groundwater in the area.
Right. It's there now. But the reality is if we're going to do this and we're going to try and pump it, we should try to get rid of some of that.
Should.
So,
thank you. So there's two things I wanted to still touch on. I knew they would come into my mind. Council had told us last time to look at this as a larger scoped phased project, with really us talking about all of this tonight as phase one. To your point, Alderman, we had talked about individual small-scale dewatering wells throughout the neighborhood if they prove to be needed as potentially for phase two. And so that goes to your point of groundwater, and that could be a future project.
Well, and if you take the pressure off the groundwater underneath the lined basin, it's probably going to relieve everything around it for a place to go to. If it vacuums out of there and gets pulled away, that's where it's going to go.
Obviously, that would be our goal with phase one is to have the greatest impact. If we still find we need to have more pumping, that's something we can do. And I told you the examples that I worked on in Naperville. I don't want to take us too far afield, but since we're here, I did want to also point out that the electric utility has a 34 kV feeder line which runs along here, overhead. Runs down to the river and crosses over the river. I'm told that this electric line is one of a handful in town that are just terrible to access. There's just no way to get there for making repairs and working on that overhead line. One option we will certainly consider if we go down this road is the potential for open cutting along here, and while we're digging a trench, putting in another 3 or 4 conduits, putting an electric underground there, and just getting rid of the overhead electric along this whole stretch. That would be at the electric utilities cost, obviously. But that would be a system-wide benefit for this stretch to be all undergrounded with electric so that we don't have the access problems that we currently have.
Is there a road through there?
What's that?
There's no road through there, right? That's all.
No, there's
overland.
actually kind of an access driveway that comes off of Fabian from the north.
Okay.
But no, down here, it's like backyard cart.
Okay, that's what I thought. It's along the edge of the property there,
Yeah.
right? It's just
Yeah,
property.
there's no access
Okay.
there.
Does
Sarah?
option 2, thank you. Does option 2 involve the clear cutting as well, or is it just?
All of
option-
them would.
All of them do, okay.
And just to touch on that one last time, even the gravity sewer option involved regrading this basin. So virtually everything we've talked about involves regrading this basin, getting rid of the
Did the
trees.
gravity include the clay addition also?
Okay, we got 2 people online that have hands up. Abby, go ahead.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, I was going to come back to what you and Leah were saying too about working into the plan. Trees would obviously not be the best use. And Gary, do you get a sense that will this land stay kind of marshy and swampy, year round as the clay liner prevents that infiltration? Do you think kind of a wetlands restoration and plantings to kind of inspire habitat and still get that wildlife and some access to nature in their neighborhood be an option?
I think the goal would be to grade it so that it drains and can be made basically into turf. I mean, I don't know that we want to. And I know, Alderman, you mentioned before about this promoting infiltration, but infiltration in this neighborhood is what the problem is.
No, and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying as an alternative because turf is fine, but they're losing a very cool, like you were saying, little natural spot and woods to replace it with something else that's going to be habitat, something else that's going to be a little prettier than just turf grass. As long as we're creating this little detention spot, we could make it look like a pretty detention spot. It doesn't have to just be a swampy spot of grass.
Yeah, I would have to defer to people who know more than me about that. And it's
Well, luckily,
something.
D3 is a pretty excellent, wetlands and restoration specialists themselves. So I'm sure if we task them with coming up with those options and put that in their scope of work here, they could provide some really great examples.
I agree.
Ann, go ahead.
So it had occurred to me through reading through this that yeah, I'm disappointed to see that we do have to take out trees again. But it also occurred to me, according to today's planning standards, this might have actually been part of the proposal before the subdivision would be built. If this was coming to us as a greenfield, looking to build houses. So I guess I'm not terribly upset now that I know that this is part of it. But I agree, if there's a way to make it look prettier, It certainly could be an amenity for the neighborhood for the water removal, but it also could be something nice to look at. And I'm hoping that we can find some sort of happy medium there as well.
Yeah, I think we go to the neighbors on that and say, what do the neighbors want out there? What do they want to look at for the next, time that they're in their home? So I agree. I mean, if we can do something creative out there that the neighbors would like, that's the best combination. And Alderman Chanzit, I'm not sure if these trees all existed out there before the development. I'm going to guess most of these trees have grown since the development was developed. I'm going to guess they did mass earthwork out there, and then these trees have sprouted in the last 30, 40 years.
Sure. I just meant that if there was some sort of expectation that it would stay as part of it, that we do something, because I sympathize with the neighbors we worked with over on Kirk Road. But that said, and I've said this many times before, I specifically chose my unit because it overlooks the Brayburn Marsh. I specifically chose my unit because I knew there would never be a rooftop immediately behind my home. I know that it's forest preserve land, but I also recognize that most of what's growing there is thistle, and it's a tinderbox, and eventually we'll have to get cleared out someday. But there will be some sort of nature component to this because it is forest preserve land. I recognize that that's just an expectation of where people chose to site their homes, and so they're used to something. If there's some way to work together, so I appreciate that we're all open to that.
Okay. Abby, you have another question?
I do. I was going to follow up on Dan's comment, and I apologize that I'm not there in person, to the residents, to Dan, to George. There's a really great example in Naperville of a neighborhood that was built on a golf course that went out of business because it flooded so much, and the neighborhoods next to it all flooded, and Pulte put a subdivision on it, which was not very popular for obvious reasons. It was built with wetlands. I'm not remembering the number of acres of wetlands incorporated into the neighborhood. And now that it's built up, the home sited, nearest the wetlands complex and these nature trails and these big open natural spaces were the first to sell. They have the highest property values. They've become an amenity for this whole neighborhood. And I know some of the owners within that neighborhood. They've done guided hikes before. I would certainly be happy to organize a kind of guided walk for anyone interested. Dan, George, residents that are in the audience tonight, or other alder people, to see how it's been done. And V3 is the one that actually manages that whole neighborhood, that whole HOA's open space. And so, yes, I would just reiterate Dan's point that City Council is very much, from what I've heard so far, and we should do a straw poll for sure, but in support of making this look as nice as possible, creating an amenity for your neighborhood where there wasn't one before, and at the same time, hopefully also solve all your flooding problems. So thank you.
I brought it up because I think we needed to talk about it up front, because I think it's got to be an important component to doing this. I mean, we can't just realize we're trying to solve one problem and create another one, or, not take advantage of something we could do there while we're designing it and constructing it. So
yeah, I think we need to get a natural person to be able to do design and pick the right types of plants that'll work in that environment. And a lot of native plants, in this case, a lot of native plants unfortunately have very deep root structures, which is not what we wouldn't want, because again, we wouldn't want to go through that clay layer. So we need to come up with the right type of plants that'll work in this instance and still protect that clay liner.
One thing that we haven't discussed is the use of the ARPA funds to defray the cost of this project. The city was a recipient of $3.2 million in ARPA funds, and City Council designated roughly half of that to go toward the cost of this project.
that's something that I think, we need to be cognizant of the fact that we're spending a lot of money to do this. But we did decide to do that part of it. We just have to be ready when the time comes to get the rest of the money and finish it. So, we have to be committed to that and to solving this problem out there, or doing what we can to remedy it as much as we can. Else for us, or?
I don't, maybe people from the audience do, though.
Okay, does anybody in the audience have any questions about this tonight? I know this is. Yeah, if you want to ask a question, come up and.
Timeframes?
Yeah, good to see you.
You're welcome to come on up.
One would be timeframes, and two, I guess, if you guys don't mind, I wouldn't mind just painting a quick picture of those woods. Just to give you an idea, I've walked them, I've been in.
Okay, make sure to use the microphone so
I've
that
been in
we
those
get
woods a
it.
lot
Can you
with my
give us your
kids.
name, too?
Jason Lindstrom.
Thank you.
The woods themselves, you're talking there's probably maybe 4 to 5 houses that maybe back up against there versus the many others that would benefit from the water. But I understand the concern, absolutely. But if you actually go into the woods, there's a lot of garbage, a lot of debris. Like it used to be an old dump. I wouldn't be surprised if some of that stuff's still in there, to be honest. If people use it for a dump, for yard waste especially. So it's not this scenic, beautiful, as soon as you walk in, you see what's going on. So I appreciate us trying to make it pretty because it'll look great for the neighborhood. But I'm not sure in its current state, you'd want to salvage it anyway. I think making it something bigger and better would be the best way to go with this. So, but back to that question, yeah, timing's everything. This February, a lot of us were nervous. The ground's frozen. We had some crazy rainstorms this month, and my neighbor actually took on water. So it's happening. We don't see each other as much in the winter, but even just off-season rains are something we all kind of tremble over. So again, thank you for the time. Thank you for the progress. I thought this was a great update, Gary, from where we came. So thank you again. But yeah, anything on timing would be great to hear.
I believe it's, staff's intention, hopefully, to get direction from City Council tonight. And once we have direction, we can turn around very quickly and give direction to V3. That's assuming then that they're going to move forward with a pumping option, going to the river, begin final engineering. They will have to go through the final engineering process. We may have to, there's potential, we may have to get into some property issues as far as attaining construction easements along the property, especially by the homestead and the covenant down here. So we need to work through all of that. There'll be an IDNR Army Corps permit to get out to the river. Forest Preserve District will have to be involved. And then coordination with other utilities, our electric utility for sure. So I would still envision, if we have said, final engineering is going to take us well into the end of 23. If we're lucky to be able to start construction before the end of the construction season, I think that'd be great. We could keep that as our goal. If not, I would envision this time next year, as soon as the frost gets out of the ground, that we could be breaking dirt and constructing this. And again, hopefully that timeline can slide forward, depending on how quickly the permitting and if we don't run into land issues. But I'd like to just kind of generally go on that timeline right now. That's roughly for final engineering.
Do we already have an outfall at the river site now? That way we don't.
That's a new outfall.
It's a new one, okay.
Yeah.
So then it's a completely separate permit.
Yeah, it'll be a permit. My understanding is it's not insurmountable. We should be able to get a permit for that. Again, maybe the trickiest part is going to be figuring out, once you directional bore through the side yard, and again, we got to make sure we have all the property rights and easements. This is going to be the trickiest part, is back here. Figuring out how we get equipment in there, how we haul out, how we get materials back in there. That's going to be the trickiest part because there's no access there. And once we figure that out and maybe get construction temporary easements, then that's the hardest, I think, from the property standpoint.
And the electric one, the easement coming from Fabian wouldn't be an option to get through there, to get equipment
Certainly,
through?
that's something we're going to have to look at.
Let's see which way would be easiest. Okay.
But getting down the pole line with a electric service truck is different than getting down the pole line with a bomber carrying 20 tons of stone. So you got to think about that.
Right.
So yeah, it's a constructability issue. No, that is, and I know they would like, the neighbors understandably would like us to be out to construction tomorrow, but I will just make them the promise, we're going to continue making progress and we're not going to stop. There's no point in stopping at this point in time.
Well, and I think too, the outfall permit to me has to be first, because if we don't have that, we can't do anything else.
Yeah, we're going to do, that'll go
all
run
that
in
stuff will
parallel.
happen together.
That one won't be linear. That'll have to be a parallel process. We'll start with that, but we're going to work on other things.
Everything else, so it's all
because
ready
we have
to go.
enough level of confidence that we'll get the outfall.
Okay. Dan, go ahead.
Given the keeping our eye on the ball here on the price, I have a feeling that some neighbors are likely to grant easements, temporary easements. I know that if I owned any of these houses, I would pave my lawn for you, so you could get a truck back there if you had to, and I would put up with it for a construction season. Remember, on the table, we had digging 40-foot trenches into the earth and having to put people up in hotels in a neighborhood that is nowhere near this. I have some experience in negotiation. I'm happy to talk to people.
Okay.
We're seeking direction tonight from City Council on should we pursue the pumping option, alternate 2, which is the larger of the pump stations, route 2, which is the route that goes to the river.
And a little Mike O'Brien tonight and say, yes, the bigger the better when it comes to stormwater. Yes, I see. Did you want to come up, sir, before we finalize our stuff tonight?
Dennis Kelter, 746 Carriage Drive. Basically, just want to thank the city council staff, the engineers. This is a good project. You put it together thoughtfully. Just encourage you, just as Jason said, to move on it as soon as possible. Something needs to be done. So we appreciate that effort very much. On the trees, you're going to like it better without the trees. I mean, it's really dumpy out there. Jason nailed it. You're not going to find, I mean, I don't want to speak for all the neighbors, and some might, and I understand you're concerned about it taking any tree out, but usually this is a hangout for kids, and it's dangerous almost. The trees are down and stuff. You're going to like it without the trees in a way. So keep that in mind. Thank you very much, though.
I'll just be interested to see what they dig up when they get out there, because I remember what it was like 40 years ago, or 50 years ago, maybe.
And I'm remiss in mentioning that representatives from V3, as I get to the end of the presentation, representatives from V3 are here tonight. So if anyone has a specific question for the engineers, they are here. But I just wanted to mention
that she had about what would be possibilities around.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or I don't know if that's the right person to ask, but
Yeah.
if they have somebody on staff that they can say
certainly do
can
have
do
people on
that
staff.
and kind of just give us an idea of what they think they can look at out there. I mean, is that
It's kind of out of your wheelhouse
okay?
too. So
And then that's fine. I get
you're
that.
asking
But
civil engineers naturalist questions.
okay, as long as they know they have somebody on staff that can handle that, we're good.
They are very capable.
We're all good.
Of
Okay.
Their firm is, yes.
Okay. Your Honor?
Yeah, I just want to, as you know, I've been here a long time. I have been in a number of basements over in this quadrant of town with the water, and I remember the 96 flood event we had, they took it pretty bad over there. And we were over there pumping out retention ponds in the middle of the night. I remember that, trying to get the water levels down. So I just want to encourage the city council to approve the proposal as outlined by our city engineer and start getting on with this, so.
I would like to see us move forward. I don't think I see anybody around the table, and I don't see any other hands, online. I think this is something that we've talked about enough. We've got what looks like a very viable plan that will handle multiple issues out there, is somewhat expandable if we ever needed to. And it's something I think we can all live with when it's done. So I think it's something we should do. Anybody else have any other comments? Jen?
I'm definitely in support of moving forward with this and, working with the residents out there, especially after the trees come down, to see anything that could be done to beautify it, if that's what their preference is. But I think this is something that definitely needs to be addressed for them, for the neighbors.
And I shake my head why it was allowed in the first place.
Okay, then that one moves forward.
And I do like the idea of the electric going under the ground.
Yeah, if there's
Hardens it.
any way to piggyback together and do the two different jobs at one time, and we would do it every time we look at a street or anything else, we look at all the infrastructure that's near it. So we tear it up once and only have to disturb it one time. That's, and if it makes the system more reliable and we can save any money doing it, that's the time to do it. Okay, per our item agenda earlier, we removed item 7. We'll move on to item 8 then, which is ordinance 2307, conditional use permit for Dave's Hot Chicken drive-through restaurant on South Randall Road.
Thank you. I'm going to be doing a report also on ordinance 23-08 and then resolution 23-39R at the same time. They all, so I just want to make you aware of that. On February 15th, the Plan Commission conducted a public hearing for the proposed development and conditional use for a drive-through restaurant for Dave's Hot Chicken. As a part of this, they'll be seeking a plan development overlay that grants modifications to the zoning code to allow a trash enclosure to be located within the 50-foot required setback in the arterial street overlay zoning district that is found along Randall Road. Essentially, that's in place for future expansion of Randall Road. As it's currently constructed and proposed, the trash enclosure would be a modification of several feet and would be mimicking a trash enclosure just straight to the north. I just want to be clear on that. That is something that's already existing for the Dunkin' Donuts building just to the north. So the modification would be fairly compliant and simple with what's already out there. This proposed restaurant is roughly 2,400 square feet. It will have some outdoor dining, and it'll be having 2 ordering aisles with a bailout or bypass lane for the site. So it generally is compliant with the conditional use requirements for a drive-through for what the zoning code does request. It also is screened from the right-of-way and has ample landscaping on the site itself. Throughout this project and at the Plan Commission meeting, there was a discussion regarding the requirement for new sidewalks to be installed along Randall Road. Essentially, that the applicant is seeking a subdivision, a new subdivision to be created. Under the subdivision code, sidewalks will be required to be added. So staff has and is requesting that sidewalks be added from the Pace bus stop that's to the north all the way to the south of the existing property that basically would end at the bank. In the Plan Commission meeting, the applicant did agree to this provision. They're currently just working out the engineering for that, and we'll be working with our staff to figure that out. And then in addition to that, the Plan Commission did have several comments about the ADA compliance on the site, and that the applicant and the Plan Commission are now aware that that needs to be brought to the Illinois State Code for some parking spaces and ramp systems to access the overall site. That will be met. And essentially, on a high level, that is it. I can pull up ramps. Apologize for not sharing that originally. The Plan Commission did vote 5-0 to approve the design review for Dave's Hot Chicken, subject to the City Council's approval of the conditional use plan development and preliminary and final plat of subdivision. And then by a vote of 5-0, the Commission recommended the City Council's approval subject to conditions included in the attached ordinance to amend the zoning map to add the plan development overlay district to 125 South Randall Road and approve the requested conditional use permit for a drive-through restaurant for Dave's Hot Chicken. And I apologize, I missed this. At the public hearing, staff requested that the Plan Commission add an additional condition of approval to state that the maintenance of the private water and sanitary service lines are the responsibility of the property owners of 125 North Randall Road for Dave's Hot Chicken or their successors. This was added as a condition of approval underneath the subdivision, but but staff also feels that this is appropriate to be added to the plan development conditions of approval. So the staff is requesting that the council allows for that modification that's in the ordinance now as proposed. It would make it a cleaner to identify who's responsible for maintenance. Since property does change hands, we don't want this to be a situation where, if Dave's Hot Chickens were to sell their property, or if the overall center that's on where Jewel is to sell, we want this to be clearly identified on paper who is responsible for the maintenance of the service line on the site. And then looking at the alternatives, the committee of the whole can recommend approval or denial of the draft ordinances and resolution as presented, or consider amendments to each before acting. The impacts for this, the approval would allow for a development of a drive-through facility and building on an underutilized parking lot. The city would see positive impacts with additional property assessments, sales tax, and employment. And the addition of the sidewalk along Randall Road would help fill in a large gap that we currently have on that section of the road. Timeline for action, if the committee of the whole votes to approve this tonight, it would be on the city council on March 6th. Staff does recommend the approval of ordinance 23-07, 23-08, and resolution 23-039 are as presented. If you do have any questions, I'm here available, but also Luigi Randazzo is here to represent Mr. Patel. He is the architect for the project, so he can also answer any questions about Dave's Hot Chicken or anything with the project.
Does anybody have any questions? This is lot 2 out there. Are there 2 more across the face of Randall Road there on that, or?
So the way that this is presented in they're creating a new subdivision, so this would be lot 2 of what's being proposed. Part of the overall development, they're, I guess, separate on the overall subdivision lot. I'm a little light on that, Scott. I don't know if you can speak to that with how it's been platted originally.
Yeah. Okay, make sure it's on. They are, it's a single lot right now, and so they're platting this entire development to create one outlot. There's no real frontage for additional outlots on here because there's the existing building to the north and then the bank to the south. So this would be the only additional outlot that would be created on this.
Yeah, I've had questions of, there's still space between the two. Would they try to stick something else in there along that space?
Getting kind of tight with the setbacks and everything else there to put another one.
Okay. Abby, do you have a question?
I do. I'm really excited about the sidewalk connectivity proposed here. So thank you for pushing for that. I was wondering if when we get to that point of designing it, having it, I know there's that drainage ditch that runs along Randall Road there, having it west of that drainage ditch to push it a little farther away from the traffic would certainly make it a much more comfortable walk for pedestrians going up and down that stretch. So that would be my recommendation once we get there. I know it's where it's at when it comes off of Wilson Street to the Pace bus stop because of where the bus stop has to be. But shifting it west from there would be really nice.
Thank you. We'll make note of that and work with the applicant to address that.
Your Honor?
Yeah, I just want everybody to know, there is one of these already in existence in business over on the northwest corner of Route 59 and 95th Street on the south side of Naperville. I have the occasion to go to Joliet. It seems like I get asked to do eulogies down there quite often. And so on my way back up to 59 here on my most recent trip, I went into this place and ordered up a chicken dinner, 4 pieces. It's very unique chicken. I don't want to get into describing it, but it was quite good. And I think this will be, we're going to have 5 or 4 or 5 chicken-orientated places out on Randall Road now. So I've had some other politicians from other towns joke with me that Batavia's about to turn Randall Road into the Chicken Little location of Kane County. But that's all well and good, I guess. But this is pretty good stuff. This is not some slam, bang, boom. This is real chicken, and they treat each piece a little bit different, and then you get a pile of French fries, and I think I got coleslaw with it. It was very nice and plenty to eat. If anybody wants to try it, I encourage you. It's on Route 59 and 95th on the northwest corner of the intersection. It's in a group with other retail operations, but it's all right there.
I've tried it. And
Another option.
It's good.
Yep. Okay, if there are no other questions, I will make the motion that we recommend to council ordinance 2307, a conditional use permit for Dave's Hot Chicken drive-through restaurant at 125 South Randall Road. Motion by Wolf, second by Miller. Roll call, please.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron. Lehman.
Aye.
Ayazi.
Aye.
Malay.
Aye.
Ewer.
Aye.
Saron.
Aye.
Vogelsinger.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Rosado. Beck. Aye. Connolly.
Aye.
Transit.
Aye.
And Solfa.
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
Okay, and then up next will be item 9, which is resolution 23, or I'm sorry, ordinance 2308, amending the zoning map to add a planned development overlay district at 125 South Randall Road. And I'll make the motion that we recommend to council ordinance 2308.
Second.
Motion by Wolf, second by Solfa. Roll call, please.
Wolf.
Aye.
Barron.
Aye.
Lehman. Ayazi.
Aye.
Malay.
Aye.
Ewer.
Aye.
Saron.
Aye.
Vogelsinger.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Rosado. Beck.
Aye.
Connolly.
Aye.
Transit.
Aye.
And Solfa.
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
Thank you. And then I will make the motion that we recommend to council resolution 2339R, approving final plat of subdivision for 125 South Randall Road.
Second.
By Solfa, roll call, please.
Wolf.
Aye.
Barron.
Aye.
Lehman. Ayazi.
Aye.
Malay.
Aye.
Ewer.
Aye.
Saron.
Aye.
Vogelsinger.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Rosado. Beck.
Aye.
Connolly. Transit.
Aye.
And Solfa.
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
Thank you. And up next would be resolution 2343, which would be the authorization of contract with MYS Incorporated for the amount not to exceed $128,694.29, which includes a 10% contingency amount for performing modifications of Wilson Street at River Street. Tony?
Yeah, Mike's not here, so he asked me to take this, but I just want to comment that I'm glad to finally see this coming about. We've been talking about it for a while, and if there's one silver lining out of the pandemic was we really saw what kind of gem we had in River Street, and I think this is going to move us even to a position to take even better advantage of that. So I'll turn it over to you, Ron.
Thank you. So we did. Unfortunately, is it not working? Okay, that's great now. So
You can hear yourself in the back.
So we know we will receive bids, and we received only we received only one bid. And the primary reason is this project has a little bit of everything. So the general contractor will have quite a bit of work to coordinate among another 4 or 5 subcontractors. So our option is not to award this bid to this contractor and make this part of a larger bid package, which is, make it part of the street program or our other parking lots program. That's going to go in the fall. But the problem will be the timing, because if we award this bid now to this contractor, then we have a chance of completing most of the work before the Memorial Day weekend, and then get out of there so that all the events on River Street, including the farmers market, can take place without much, construction noise or, construction vehicles out there. And we don't think that, based on the bid prices, we don't think that adding it or making it a part of a larger bid package will show us any cost savings, from the project standpoint. It's only 10% above the engineer's estimate, so it's not too far out. The contractor was not aware that he's the only contractor bidding on this project, so he didn't know that. He was actually surprised when I opened the bid. He's like, "Am I the only one?" So he must be thinking he left a lot of money on the table. So, especially if he reads his memo, because the budget is $171,000 for this project. So we recommend, even though we really don't do this, that we bring a single bid and ask the city council to approve, but we recommend that we go ahead with this, the contractor. I have checked their references, and everybody said they are very responsible and responsive contractor. But most of those projects, they work by themselves. Like, they didn't have any sub. So they worked well by themselves. Yeah, I think we'll find out how they work with their subs, in this project. So, any question?
The signal work that's going to be done in 23, 24 or later, that's included in the bid.
Yes,
correct?
yes.
So the whole project is significantly under what was budgeted in the TIF.
Yeah,
from the TIF.
yes. So the signal equipments, like the audible signals and the posts where this audible signal is going to go, those things we hear that in a long delay, like 6 to 9 months, even longer. So they will submit all that catalog cards to us. We'll get those approved by IDOT, and then they will order the equipments. And as soon as they come, the way I have it written, that within 30 days of receiving those items, once they receive those, they will install those. They don't normally like to hold on to that, because they have to store those, and they may go bad. So they will come and install. But the contract calls them that within 30 calendar days, they will come and install those things.
Okay, good. Any other questions, Leah?
So if I understood the memo correctly, we will do our part in turning River Street into a one-way and changing the lanes on Wilson Street. And we can move forward with that even before the signals get changed, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, I'm just happy to finally see this. We've been talking about this for a long time, so.
The best thing will be no barricades out
Yeah.
there for the summer season, and people actually seeing that and not having to, listen to that again.
Yep.
That to me is, I think, the biggest benefit of all this. And I think it also helps every business that's there, including the new ones, and filling in any vacancies over there that, happen. We need to make sure that we just keep that going and do everything we can to get that done. And if we can get it done right away, let's just get it done. We've talked about this for years, how we were going to get control of that intersection. And I think, to me, that's the best part of the whole deal, is we retain, the ability to do what we want there and not have to wait on IDOT for that.
All right, if there's no other questions, I move that we recommend the council with positive approval of Resolution 2343R, modification of Wilson Street at River Street bid award.
Second.
Second was by you, or? Yep. Right. Roll call.
Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Rosado absent, Beck,
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
Jansit,
Aye.
Solfa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Lehman, Ayazi,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
and Ewer.
Aye.
Motion carries 13-0.
Just for clarification, the motion was made by Malay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem.
No worries.
And then up next, item 12, which is Resolution 2342R, authorizing a contract with Trans Systems Corporation to perform Batavia Avenue Road Phase 1 preliminary engineering for an amount not to exceed $110,483. Couldn't decide which one of these was a marquee thing for tonight, so they're both there.
Yeah. Yeah, here's another item that we've been talking about for a long time, and, waiting on IDOT really has caused it to be drag on a little longer, but glad to see that we're able to move forward here. And
Laura, okay, you do. Thank you. So this is another project that we have discussed for a long time, and we did bring the feasibility study to the council to show that we have submitted that to IDOT, and IDOT has agreed with us that a road diet is feasible on Route 31 or Batavia Avenue. So this is the contract to move forward with the next phase, which is the phase 1 preliminary engineering. IDOT wants us to, the preliminary engineering is to really do a lot of studies, if you want to say, which is environmental study. Then they want us to do an intersection design study. Even though Wilson and 31 and Main and 31 has recently been, Main and 31 especially been recently completed, but they want us to see what the impact will be if we convert, north and south, including those intersection, one lane in each direction. So they want us to do all that. We didn't really do those parts in feasibility study. Feasibility study, we did traffic count, we did look at the accident analysis. Those data will get incorporated into this study again, but we don't have to do those all over again. They also want us to, phase 1 will require us to invite public and get input. So those comments get included into a report that we call it PDR, or Project Development Report, that we do on every single project that we have to take it through the IDOT. So it's a IDOT standard operating procedure, if you want to say. So this phase 1 contract that is in front of you, that is going to do all the studies and create that PDR or project development report and submit to IDOT for their approval. We have discussed the proposal with Trans System, and we have pared it down because we assume, or we are making some assumption that some of the things that typically we'll do on a bigger scale project like Main Street or Prairie and Wilson, some of those things are not going to be needed, just because we are not taking out the curb line and widening it or narrowing it or anything like that. So those things have been included or excluded from the contract. But in case IDOT, while we do or prepare the PDR, if they come and tell us that we have to do all that, then we'll come back to the city council for an amendment to the contract. I want to highlight that. We expect that the phase 1 preliminary engineering will be completed by next year, May 2024. And then once we get the approval, it will kick the phase 2 design engineering, and that will take about another 9 to 12 months. So we expect to go into construction in sometimes late summer, early fall in May 2025. That's the goal. We are also looking for outside funding for our phase 2 and construction portion of it. So we have applied for ITEP funding, which was open last fall, and we'll probably hear about that in next couple of months. And there will be some more funding opportunities in next year or so. Once we get the buy-in from IDOT, we think that our chance of getting funding, because we can then put IDOT as a co-applicant or sponsor agency, and chance of getting outside funding is much higher at that point. So phase one, and this is the route everybody's going. If you apply for any funding nowadays, they want to see that you have done phase one preliminary engineering and have completed that, which I think I have talked about this. The Prairie and Wilson, we got the funding, like they came to us saying, you want funding to move forward with the phase two and construction, because we already finished or completed the preliminary engineering with our initial project, which was south of Webster Street. So it's kind of, you get a leg up in getting funding if you finish the phase one preliminary engineering. So any question?
Yeah, one thing I would just suggest is if you get a chance, contact the administration at the Homestead about this improvement, because I've had several of their residents very excited positively about this being put into place, because most of them tell me that they largely depend on coming out onto Batavia Avenue and coming in on Batavia Avenue versus trying to sit out on Fabian Parkway, which is right above a curve, and there's all this other stuff flying around them there. So I think they are of the opinion they would significantly use this much more than any other spot, and wanted to make sure that the design was specifically for the older driver, because they say, you know, you probably need to have a turn bay in the middle of Batavia Avenue where they can sit and then make a left-hand turn into the Homestead when they're going north on Batavia Avenue. That's one suggestion I heard. And another one is that there should be some fairly good lighting around that intersection, because some of them come back at night, their eyesight's not as good, and this would be most helpful if it was better lit than what is currently the situation there.
We'll definitely, invite Homestead and everybody else to comment on the project. And I did talk about this in the memo that Kane County is currently doing a phase one preliminary engineering for the intersection itself. So our project limit goes about 500 feet south of the intersection. So it will coordinate that. Actually, Transsystem is not doing that, but we'll coordinate with KDOT and on that portion too.
Other questions? Seeing none, I'd recommend for council approval. I move that we recommend for approval, council, the resolution 2342R, authorizing a contract with Trans-Systems Corporation to perform Batavia Avenue Road Phase 1 preliminary engineering for an amount not to exceed $110,483.
Second.
We'll give that to Abby.
Motion by Malay, second by Beck. Roll call, please.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Rosado absent, Beck,
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
Chanzit,
Aye.
Solfa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron, Lehman,
Aye.
and Ayazi.
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Up next is another exciting thing, Resolution 2340R, adoption of the Batavia Bike and Pedestrian Plan. Something that a lot of people have worked a lot of time on to get to this point.
Yes. Kind of appropriate. I didn't really plan on the bike plan and pedestrian plan following the approval of moving forward with the road diet, but it certainly is appropriate. And it's mentioned in several places throughout the bike and pedestrian plan that will assist in making improvements to, all three areas, whether it be the sidewalks, the roadways, and the crosswalks. We had put the plan out there to the stakeholder group, and the Bicycle Commission provided some feedback. They noted that in our discussions on our plans for Main Street with the reconstruction between Van Nortwick and Randall Road, that it was recommended that we have bike lanes instead of shared lane markings. And I think that's just a matter of things that may come up as recommendations as part of this plan. City Council can always take a look at those recommendations and do something that they think is, maybe even an improvement on that. And so the plans that have been brought here to City Council and that the public has had an opportunity to comment on, those continue to be what our plans are for road construction. And then also in section 3.5, the programs and policies, and we had identified that there is an existing initiative that the Bicycle Commission had sponsored a bike rodeo in the past. They let me know that that is no longer a current initiative, and so we might consider moving those to be a recommendation versus identified as a current initiative. And then also just some general comments we want to, throughout the document, emphasize interagency cooperation for those matters that we identify that aren't necessarily under our jurisdiction, but might be a part of the county road system or the state road system or road signals, and that we would work with them and also support the Fox River Trail system as a network. And look at it holistically as opposed to, sections owned by different parties. And also with regard to our achievement of bronze level status for bicycle-friendly community, the Bicycle Commission would like us to continue to use the League of American Bicyclists recommendation to shoot for being a silver level status bicycle-friendly community. And I just wanted to acknowledge that we have Joanne Spitz here, who is the secretary for the Bicycle Commission. And Joanne, did you want to make any comments? Not at this time? Okay, but she's here in case you might have any questions for her. And then also, there was identified that there is something was omitted from the plan unintentionally, and that was that there will be plans to put a crosswalk at McKee Street on Route 31, planned as part of the road diet. There were a number of intersections such as Carlisle, Main Street, and that had been mentioned as part of this plan, dependent upon approval of the road diet, and Wilson and McKee would be another one of those. And I think Alderman Beck, if you wanted to chime in with some of the other issues that you had sent me comments about.
Sure. Thanks, Laura.
Sure.
There was one that I thought would be worth putting back into the plan, which was a recommendation from the consultants about upgrades to signalization. And Laura, I know you said that the only signal that we have control over is that one at Island and Wilson, correct?
Yes.
Now, I would be curious to know if we put it back in, knowing that this is a guiding document of things that we know would improve the safety of our downtown, and use it as a way to also work with agencies that do control those signals to say this is a priority for us. We know that there are improvements out there that are being used in other places, such as the lead time, the pedestrian only crossings, and I can't remember all the technical terms for it. These are things that are being used elsewhere. I know it's difficult to work with IDOT. I know it's expensive and it takes a long time, but if we don't put it in the plans, then it's definitely never going to happen. So that's one recommendation that I would like to see put back in. And in addition to that, some short-term metrics and putting some short-term goals together. Perhaps it's part of our strategic planning process coming up. But I guess in general, I'll kind of stop there. I have other comments or questions, but I guess my biggest question for the group would be, is their recommendation list look reasonable? And is a $300,000 a year investment something that we think we can commit to? I know that when budget time comes, that a lot of other priorities can bubble up to the surface, but my greatest fear when doing big plans like this is that it looks great when we adopt it, and then it sits on a shelf and isn't actually invested in. We were able to commit to our $100,000 sidewalk plan. I would love to see these recommendations accomplished in the next 10 years as the consultants have laid out. And I'm curious what other people's, the temperature of the council is on whether or not that seems feasible to them.
Just to provide some additional information. So definitely we would want to identify short-term metrics, and the tables that are located in this plan, I would recommend that there be, whether they be quarterly or semi-annually, that there should be a report and a dashboard to show which one of those items are in progress, would be, or if they're completed, they're green. If they're in progress, they're yellow. If they haven't been started, they're red, so that we can try to turn these tables green will be the ultimate goal. There definitely will be specific SMART goals incorporated into the next 3-year strategic plan. And then also the $300,000 that is recommended as the funding commitment here. Do realize that it includes the $100,000 that City Council has already identified toward the annual sidewalk improvements. And so it would be a $200,000 increase to that funding amount, and that all $300,000 would be allocated among the 3 different projects that exist there, and that it would be beginning with the 2024 year, because we've already allocated the $100,000 from this year to the Safe Routes to School project to add additional sidewalk in our community.
Because that extra 200,000 would get split between road improvements and anything else that we did.
Yes.
Right, okay. Sarah?
I have a question on kind of along the lines of what you were talking about just now, the Safe Routes to School and the sidewalks. One of the lower priority projects on the form that you sent was a patch of sidewalk 400 feet in length on Deer Path between not even all the way Wilson to Main Street. That is a very dangerous section of that road because it's a curve, and there is no way for kids north of Main Street to safely get to Grace McWayne on foot or bicycle currently, because they have to traverse a curve where cars are traveling quickly and presents dangerous scenarios. So is there a way to get that project on a list of higher priority, or maybe in the Safe Routes to School category? I'm not sure what the options are.
Gary, do you want, you have got your hand up?
Isn't that development, future development? Yeah. So I think that is identified as going in with future developments. So ideally, the city would not pay for that sidewalk, a developer will pay for that sidewalk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, where exactly are you talking about?
Deer Path
So it's
just
between
east or west
Oh,
side
just
of
north
the
of Main.
road.
Yeah, that would be part of a development proposal.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Got it.
I'm sorry, one more comment?
Yes.
I did want council, and Laura, I've already said this to you internally, but this is a living and breathing document that 10 years from now may look completely different. It's just going to morph over time and constantly be looked at and reviewed. But I'll point out, like on the sidewalk implementation matrix on page 37, Republic is listed there and it's shown as year number 4. Except Republic is part of the Safe Routes to School program. So Republic may get done in year number 1 and something else may slide to year number 4. So I just want everyone to understand that even though this matrix exists, that the numbers are somewhat irrelevant in that we're going to be swapping and making projects work as they make sense.
And just like you made the comment that as we're doing our strategic planning about which projects within the matrix to prioritize, we can make those adjustments.
Also, I think that this is very exciting, and I love seeing everything that is planned for the future.
I think when you get the plan, we also have to remember, again, as Abby said, it has to be something that we review and that we hold ourselves accountable to. If we say we're going to get this stuff done, that, of course, we can't do everything every year, but we measure it out and figure out how we get as much of it done as we can. And then also identify funding sources. If there are other funding sources for other parts of this or any parts of this, that we do that at the same time. If we're doing road work and we want to add a lane to it, or we want to add something to it, we need to make sure that we try to put those together so that we make it happen at the same time and save the money on it, rather than to try to go back and do it later, or just to add it to a road that was just done 2 years ago. So I think that's important, as well as we lay out all the matrix that we're doing. Mark?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is just trying to obviously roll this into existing things, since the sidewalks are mostly covered by our 100,000, but then we get funding and that can do other things that's helpful, and trying to build it into any roadway improvements we do.
This is where I want to see all these plans get dumped into the GIS system so that they can all feed off of each other, that, hey, this year we're going to be doing water main over here, we're going to be doing a street here, reconstruction here. That's when we should do the parts of this that fit into that.
So I think having just saying right now, yep, ready to put another $200,000 in. I'm not ready to put another $200,000 in because I don't really know how it fits in to all the other projects, because it might not be 200,000. It could be another 150,000. If that's something that is easily slid in the budget, then yes, I want to move towards this. That's not a no, it's a how, and everything that we say we want to do that we haven't thought of yet is, well, how do we pay for it? So this is just as important as a lot of other projects we have.
We still are 75 years behind on fixing streets, so we always have to think of that. I mean, and that's the reality of it. I mean, we're never going to be done with all of it, because if we ever were done with all of it, we'd start all over again and rebuild everything. So I think the biggest goal is to try to plan out how we can get the most we can every year as we're doing it. So we do them in combination and make the best decisions.
I would just like to recognize the Active Transportation Alliance, Ride Illinois, and then all of our partners who, whether they were on the steering committee or whether they were part of the stakeholders group, and then also members of the public who took the time to either fill out the electronic survey and provide us with very specific information in the map tool about areas of concern, or they took the time to come to in-person public meetings to engage with the consultants that we hired to help us with the project. It really has been a community effort to put this plan together, and staff is really excited to start work in the plan.
Comments? Okay, and I will make the motion that we approve Resolution 2340R for the adoption of the Batavia Bike and Pedestrian Plan.
Second.
By Wolf, second by Malay. Roll call, please.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron, Lehman, Ayazi,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer, Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Zotto absent, Beck,
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
Chanzit,
Aye.
and Solfa.
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
Thank you. Okay, next is item 14, Resolution 2341R, approving intergovernmental agreement between the City of Batavia and the Park District for the installation of fiber optic cable to the Harriel Hall Quarry Beach. Alderman Saron?
Yes.
Park District requested connection to our fiber optic system, and they're going to pay for it. So I'll turn it over if you want to add to it.
I couldn't have said it better myself. They're really
The formalities.
yeah, that is the nuts and bolts of it. They would like to be. They're already connected to our fiber at their existing facility. They are requesting increased and much more reliable connectivity than they have right now, which is an old phone line nailed to a dead tree. So we want to do a little bit better than that for them. So the resolution is before you is spent. This is approximately a $67,000 estimate between the fiber crews as well as the directional boring crews through the quarry. As Alderman, you said, this was 100% reimbursable by the by the Park District, and they did approve this their end of the IGA on the 21st of February. So they are just waiting on us. So I leave it to you for any other questions.
I did have a question just because I know they're paying for it, but this scope of work from a time standpoint isn't an issue for.
Right, that's correct. Yeah, great question. I had solicited quotes from some of our directional boring contractors prior to the end of the year just so that they could budget an appropriate amount on their end. And they're pretty much teed up and ready to go. So I will be back to you with contracts in the coming meetings here, but they have already pre-purchased material. They understand the importance of the job, so they're ready to go on this.
Awesome. Anybody else have any questions, comments?
Long-term maintenance is by who?
By us.
It would be our fiber line down there.
Right, just like all the other connections to other facilities, we have a fiber distribution panel where the fiber terminates, and that's ours, and then they would just connect their equipment to it.
So similar like what we have with the school district or any of the other Park District buildings.
Exactly correct. Yep, exactly. We're just a big extension cord in between their buildings for them.
Anybody else? With that, I would make a motion to approve the City Council Resolution 23-041-R, approving an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Batavia and the Batavia Park District for the installation of fiber optic cable to the Hall Quarry Beach.
Second.
Is that you, Tom? Seconded by Conley. Roll call, please.
And this one is definitely Cerrone that made the motion?
Definitely is Cerrone.
Thank you. Cerrone?
Aye.
Vogelsinger?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Rosato absent? Beck? Aye. Thank you. Connolly?
Aye.
Chanzit?
Aye.
Sofa?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Barron?
Aye.
Lehman?
Aye.
Ayazi?
Aye.
Malay?
Aye.
And Ewer?
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
Thank you. Right, moving on then to project status. Laura?
Thank you. Batavia Restaurant Week is a collaboration between the City of Batavia, Main Street, and the Chamber. And our participating restaurants, of which there are over 35 this year, are offering a 20% food discount March 5th through 9th. And we do this to promote all of the many restaurants and more every day that we have here in town. But this tends to be a time of year where their business is the slowest. So we want everybody to get out there, try some new restaurants, go to your old favorites, but definitely participate March 5th through 9th. And you just have to mention Restaurant Madness to receive the discounts. In Public Works, staff has held a kickoff meeting with the lighting consultant for designing the catenary lighting on North River Street. The Streets Department has taken advantage of this fairer weather that we're having to get the street sweeper out there to perform cleanup in the downtown and industrial park areas that we usually can't get to until much later. But when the snow melts, we already start receiving I will say comments, that the stuff that lived under the snow piles is clutter. So we're happy to get out there and get a jump start on that. And then also the plans for the Phase 2A wastewater treatment plan improvements have been officially advertised for bid, and those will be opened in early April. The police department on February 23rd, they participated in the Batavia Special Education Parents Network Resource Fair, and one of our officers was on hand to answer questions from other participants and parents, and also our in-house social worker from AID was also present to answer questions and gather new information on additional resources that we can use for families in our community. Some other things that the police department has planned that are, right in conjunction with the resolution to adopt the 10 principles is there's a tentative date set for the first Coffee with a Cop event. It's going to be Thursday, March 23rd at the Starbucks on Randall. We're still working on a time for that event. And then also the police department is working in collaboration with Kane County State's Attorney's Office to do a public presentation that's related to fraud and the elderly. There have been some other regional events that are very well attended, and we want to make sure that our seniors are aware of the fraud attempts that they might be subject to and can protect themselves against that. And that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions for me.
One thing. Some of you have asked me, you were curious just to know what was going to happen tonight in the city of Chicago. Well, under the report I see on my phone here, the big winner is Paul Vallis. He's got 35% of the vote, and followed by Brandon Johnson with 20% of the vote, followed by Mayor Lightfoot with 17% of the vote. And everybody else is way down in the less than 10%.
One and done. Wow.
It's not going to be, nobody's going to get 50%.
Right.
So they'll have to have the race the same day that half of you were up for election. It'll be that same day that they'll vote on who.
I can guarantee we're going to win.
Good point.
We know how to do things out here. We don't have 8 people in one race. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, we'll move on to item 16, which is discussion on permit approval process.
Do you want to start us out, Mark?
Yeah, just really quickly, because most important thing about this discussion is this is about process, not people. So when we've talked about this before on council that we wanted to address this, that's what it was really about. I think, Laura, I know there's some things you kind of wanted to touch on, but if we can ultimately bring in somebody to kind of take a look at our processes and the way we do things, I see it as a benefit eventually to that whole department, because I know they're super busy. I mean, it happens all the time that we have stuff on these agendas, and they're pretty busy with everything that's going on. That hopefully it makes lives easier. Improved process makes lives easier, makes everybody more efficient, and it's not. I don't want anybody coming in feeling stressed about it. So again, that's where I'm at. Is that let's talk about process.
In conjunction with this, I know that we have received feedback in the past about the process and difficulties that people had with that, and that overall there was a perception in the community that it was a difficult process, and we took those comments to heart. And we have made a number of changes beginning in 2021 when we made the change to combine the Community Development Department with the Economic Development Department, and at the same time talked about creating the economic development manager position. It wasn't until I think May or June of 2021 when we were first able to fill that position. Unfortunately, the individual that we hired needed to take a number of leaves of absence, but Anthony, who was able to step into the position, only had the position as of last October. But we really think between the combination of making this a one-stop shop team for development will be a much better experience, whether it is individuals who are wanting to relocate their business here, start a new business here, expand their existing business here, or build something here, or just make a small improvement to an existing business that'll be a better experience for it. The idea for the the economic development manager position, I've said it a number of times, is to be a concierge in the process, to not only be there to answer questions about the what ifs and questions people have when it's just an idea, but to help those individuals cultivate that idea into a concrete project and then assist them in transversing the process that exists and answering any questions along the way. Be that one point of contact, the person that will be able to find out if, what's going on with my project and how do I move things forward. Also, recent hires and promotions within the department have really changed the face as well. We had a couple of retirements. It offered us the opportunity for a promotion within the department, but then we've hired 2 new individuals into the department as well. And so while all of this is still pretty fresh at this point, I don't think that we've really felt the impact of those changes. And so one of the things that I would recommend is we could go out and hire a consultant right now, but I think it might be beneficial for us to maybe pause for 6 months and see what changes we're able to see with there being so many different things and approaches that we're trying to take. And Scott, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things in relation to that too is, Anthony is still working into the role that he's in, but we can already see benefits and impacts that he's made in this role. He's much more hands-on in regards to businesses in particular, the Main Street organization, and just talking to people about new projects and things that are going on. The Mocha Coffee is a good example of one that he bird dogged that through the whole process, and that was very complex and difficult to get through that just because there was a lot of hand-holding that was necessary. And so he really has the right characteristics to do that with businesses and to try and help them. And I call it an ombudsman. She calls it, a concierge. But, if there's an issue with a permit or something that's going through the process, he has the right personality to talk to people, try and work it out, and then talk to whoever he needs to at the city, whether it's our department, Public Works, or what have you. So I think he's really been doing an excellent job of trying to do that. The other thing that we've been trying to do, but because of COVID and other things regarding ET and the fact that we're destroying our city hall right now is some of the electronic permitting. We found that we had some things go into electronic permitting. That's actually worked very well because that really has lessened the workload on our clerical staff because a lot of the information is input by the applicants into the database directly. And so they don't have to then, do all that information. So that makes them more efficient. So we've wanted to expand that, but because of the intricacies of the IT and trying to cable this building and do other things, they haven't been able to quite get to that. So we have another grouping of permits that we'd like to move into that, but as soon as the IT gets freed up with some of their things, we'll start moving into that direction and start opening those things up. Just so you know, I mean, we are a busy department, and that's why we did ask for staff, from before, and that has helped things out for many things and trying to keep things done on a timely basis. Just as an example, we did 1,700 permits last year, which is less than the years before, which we did over 2,000, and we had over 4,000 inspections. So, we are quite quite busy. We have, Jeff has to do inspections sometimes when our main inspector's gone. We also have the code enforcement officers who are hybrid inspectors and officers, and then they do inspections for, smaller things like fences and sheds and, those types of things. So we're doing as best as we can, but, obviously it's a cyclical thing too. Keep in mind that we are now starting to get into the busy season right now with new permits and everything else. So, we're going to get the glut of permits, and we try and work through those, and then we'll get through that. So it's a cyclical thing. It's like that in every single municipality I've worked in, and any other municipality I've dealt with. So it's just one of those things that, you have to try and work through and get through it too. But certainly, additional discussion, we're more than open to talking about things in process and see what we can do. We can always make improvements. I mean, there's, that's a given.
Speaking of which, we are going to be creating our own feedback loop in the form of providing a survey to everyone who is filing an application for a permit. We'll notify them of the process when they're applying for the permit, but we'll also remind them that we'd like them to fill that survey out when we are doing the final inspections as well. And so with 1,700 or 2,000 permits coming in, that ought to be quite a bit of feedback that we can use to make further improvements to the process.
I think that would probably be the best thing to look at to see what the public perception is or what they're willing to share back with us, what they've had issues with. And then you guys look at that and, is that reality of what you dealt with from them? And then we get to decide, what do we do with that and where do we move with that and what we can improve or what we think we can afford to improve or, at that point.
You can always hire more staff.
Right.
But, that's
I was just going to say that, we could always just throw money at it and put more people in the department and you would cut down the time.
When Peggy's
but
not
would that make it better? Right. It really, to me, from what I hear is, when people can do an electronic one, that's the easiest thing. And it's got to be easier in the office for you if the stuff all gets input and you're not having somebody else have to input it. And, and then it's just inspections and, the permits.
That's what we found. We weren't sure how that was going to go initially, when we first started this, if it was going to make things easier. And we found out from our clerical people, it actually has made it easier for them. So.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add two things. One, just support the feedback loop. I think that's awesome. Keep in mind, I think we need to, anonymous should be an option for one, because there's one thing I've heard over the years is when I hear some stories that they don't want, don't say anything because I gotta,
I know what it's about
backlash. Like there's not going to be backlash, but it's a fear, and I'd rather people speak confidently and whatnot.
It's always a benefit to a very busy department when they can get a project completed. And so to the extent that somebody is saying that we're punishing them from holding them back, we'd prefer to go in to an inspection and say, 100% you have followed the code. It really doesn't make sense for us to be in any way obstructing that process.
No, I know, but it's if it's their mental block, we got to work around it. The other thing, I think we should do some kind of communication thing, and Laura, you and I talked about this. There have been some changes, some positive changes, and there is a perception out there that we still need to battle. So taking some marketing approaches to talk about electronic permitting and the things we're doing out there could be a nice project for Lori to help promote our our economic development.
Well, and I've even heard too, sometimes it's like, well, yeah, I went down, I went to the city, I got all the stuff I needed, I got all the paperwork, I got everything, I turned it in, and then they gave me back 6 questions. Well, I answered 3 of them, and they never got back to me yet. Well, if you only answered 3 of the questions, you need to answer everything that they ask. And maybe come up with a way to, like you say, Nick, market that when you're asked for information, don't wait 3 months to give them the information back. Get it to them in a week, and then you get your permit back. If you wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, that's on you, and they can't respond to that until they have it. And that's some of the stuff that I've heard or I've dealt with directly myself, is when you don't get that information back to them, you don't know how they're going to respond to you until you give them the information. So, how do we get that through to the applicants that that's their responsibility, and part of, making it a better, operation is to get all the information through.
Well, and I mean, that
the last
goes,
thing we want to do is, have permits sit on our desk. And we also don't want to have to go back and do rework by inspecting things. I mean, that's the last thing we want to do, because that just piles things up, and there's other projects constantly coming in. So the last thing we want to do is hold up projects, and, and we're not punitive in that way. I mean, I understand what you're saying about, people not wanting to say who it is. It's obviously more helpful for us if they tell us who it is, so we can, understand specifics on that permit, and maybe we can glean it from, the survey information. But, I will say that I would not be very happy with any of my staff if we were trying to be punitive about anything, even if I get it. But I mean, I'm just saying that would be a problem, a personnel issue that I would have to deal with, because I would not want to do that.
right, and that was a marketing statement, not, I wouldn't expect
I know.
that, and
I know.
I've even told them that, like, no, that's not.
But since we're talking about it publicly, I just want to publicly say that. So.
And I get it. And I guarantee everyone will sign their name when it's all rave reviews, and there will be plenty of those. So it's just the way of the world when it comes to doing those types of things. That's part of the process, though, when maybe that is something that we can review and say, well, we don't, the instructions aren't clear that if
And that's what I'm saying is if
together,
we clarify it from this side, and we make it a real point up front that you can help expedite the process if you participate right away. If you continually move things forward, you help make it faster, and maybe, bring more ownership to the applicant, so that they understand that, hey, if you make this an easy thing to do, if you work at it instead of just, whenever it's convenient for you to get back to, as you got 4 other projects going, you make sure you get the stuff in as timely as you can. That makes the whole process work faster, which makes the department work faster, if they're not looking at a stack of half, answered questions.
Oh, and just one other thing before I let Mark go. One of the things over the last 10 years of, the words we've kept saying is we want an environment that is business friendly. Like, what can we do for you? And the bringing on Anthony, I mean, he can't help but exude that when you walk into the room with that smile. So that is a great addition, and we should market that more and get him out in front of people.
Business friendly personified.
Sure. Yeah.
I agree. I think Anthony is a great face for the community development department and the economic development departments there. I mean, he's making great relationships with people. And I mean, we're in a really, I think, an exciting stage where I think your department's just going to get busier and busier. I mean, with everything we've seen come before us, even in the last few months, with developments on Randall Road and downtown, even in the industrial park, there's a lot happening, and we have a lot of land still to develop. And we have some exciting, we have some land still to develop.
Redevelop them.
Redevelop, yeah.
That's more exciting.
I think we're on the cusp of some exciting times. And in light of that and all the changes in the department recently, I would actually support that this would be the best time to bring in a consultant, just to give feedback. I mean, and just to see how can your department run smoother, even with the current changes that we're hopeful for. Because it's better to just take advantage of that now instead of waiting 6 months, a year, and then having to remake changes. So I think I would support, and I go along with Mark here, I think bringing a consultant in sooner than later would be good for you guys, good for the city, good for the businesses, and just show that we're listening and we're paying attention and we want the best for everybody. So I support the consultant.
So while we're making the changes, we should bring in the consultant.
Yes.
Okay.
If we change process or we change, layout of how we set up the department or anything, we do that one time. The more you say that makes more sense to try to do it once than see what happens with what we've got now and then turn around and then say, well, you know what, we really don't like this. Change it.
It is, except we just went through a whole slew of changes right now and we haven't seen the effect of it. So if someone comes in and makes different changes, we may not know if those were the changes that were the right way to go or not. But I mean, it is up to you.
Yeah, I guess just a couple things. Yeah, I can see both sides of it. I think, again, just like anything that gets proposed, we don't have to accept everything that's proposed. If we're like, well, we'd like to see how this goes, and then, okay, yeah, maybe we will try that 6 months from now because our way didn't work or something. But I think getting those eyes is just important, especially with so much more coming. I mean, we're about to have a new downtown plan. And if that sparks interest in, oh, okay, now we understand what Batavia wants, and we could be too late to do it later and then cause challenges or cause road bumps right at the beginning of that. The other side of it is I love that Anthony is doing some of the things he's doing, and I want to understand if that's part of his role is to help building permits get through, or if that's just something he's doing because of his passion and trying to be that concierge. I just don't, because it seems like he should be.
It was actually something we talked about with his predecessor.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the job description.
Okay.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
But I would think if we could get, see a statement of work and cost and stuff from a couple different consultants who's out there, who does what is their process, would be certainly the first step to understanding, okay, is that the money that we want to spend right now, and are we going to get the value we expect out of it, which I think we will. I mean, I've dealt with consultants for the last couple decades in IT and usually have some good insight. Tom?
Yeah, I would just support doing this sooner than later and doing it now, at least getting proposals of how much it would cost and scopes of work.
When I reached out to you, there weren't any recent examples of it. If anybody has any recent examples, please, share them, because if we don't get the feedback, then it's difficult for us to know if this was something that someone experienced 3 years ago, or is it coming from developers today? Because we're actually hearing, I'm just going to say, we're hearing really good feedback from the developers that we're working with today. And I could provide you with examples to talk to.
I would like.
Well, one of the scopes.
It's that are recent. I mean, and that are not from sour grapes complaints either, like actual real complaints.
If we go out and talk about the scope, though, like the feedback loop could be a part of it on how to set it up properly or which ones work best, or, I mean, that could be, there's always things we can learn. So I don't think there's urgency because I think there is advantages to seeing how things are going. There's advantages to both approaches, but at least to reach out and see what's out there and get a scope of work and some pricing. At least it puts it on the calendar and we can review it and when we get that information, or I don't know. It's good.
Maybe it is to hire somebody to talk to people who have had recent projects over the last 18 months.
The feedback
and,
itself might be it.
a random sampling of those, and then to provide that feedback directly to City Council.
I think that'd be part of the scope of that work would be a consultant that is like, okay, well, let's talk to new businesses. Let's talk to developers that do a lot of building and things like that. I think that would be part of that. That's just my guess. I have no idea what they do, but I think that's why it's important. Just go ask a couple of these consultants, what is your statement of work? What does it cost? And then we see, is that going to do anything? The problem is there's a lot of anecdotal stuff out there. I had a couple from last year, but that's it. When you have a bunch of people say, "Hey, I've got 5 to 10 anecdotal things," then it doesn't seem anecdotal. It seems like that there is an underlying thing, and I think that's where I'm headed.
I'm just, I think this is what I'm hearing is kind of going offline from what the discussion is supposed to be as far as a process. It sounds like, the original idea was to talk about the process. And when you talk about a process, you have to kind of map that out and figure out where it's broken and where it's not working. And this is turning more into complaints of what's happened in the past and all the different kinds of consultants. I think what we need to figure out is exactly the issue that needs to be addressed to decide what needs to be addressed, of whether it needs to be a consultant that needs to be addressed or a process that needs to be mapped, and to figure out where improvements need to be made in that process. Because I just am hearing process and then people complaints and everything like that. So I think that's what needs to come down to, is what we need to decide what is it that really is wanting to be addressed.
I think that's.
If I may, one of the things to think about, and I think I mentioned it to both of you, that the city of Batavia is a little more complicated because we have more things. We have sewer provider, we have an electric utility, we have other things. So we've tried to do this as a one-stop shop through community development, community economic development, so that they're not getting 5 different comment letters from different divisions. Because I've worked in municipalities where that's where they did it. And so now you've got all these different comments, and sometimes they conflict with each other's, and you have the streets department says something different than the water department. We compile all those comments, adjust for the discrepancies, and make sure that a single unified letter goes out. That takes time, unfortunately, because we have to go, make sure that all these different divisions are getting all their comments in. We have to go through and make sure that all the comments make sense and don't conflict with each other, so that they don't say, well, this department said, put a sidewalk in, and this one said don't, or whatever the situation is. So that's kind of part of what we do. So our process is going to be a little more complicated just because of the complexities of the city and the things that we have to review, and that we do it as a one-stop shop type of situation. So that's part of the process.
I view it as, if we spend a little bit of money, we bring in a consultant, it's only a win-win. Either they're going to come in and be like, you guys are amazing, you're doing everything wonderfully, we don't see a problem here at all, kudos to you, which could happen, and then that would be awesome. Or they come back with some feedback, with here's some ways you guys can improve, here's where you're doing great, here's where we see the department can change in some ways. And then that would only be better for the city also, in preparing us for the next steps for the city. So I don't see this as being a negative any way it comes out. I really don't see them coming in and being like, well, we got to get rid of this person. That's not what we're doing here at all. It's coming in to see, because, our job on council is to listen to our community and to represent them. And that's what we're doing here tonight. So
us too. It's our job to listen to the community as well and try to make changes that are beneficial. But if we don't receive the complaints, or you hear that we receive complaints and we're not addressing them, they need to be specific instead of anecdotal.
Well, and that's where the consultant's going to step in. Because let's just say, if there's a conflict, even with a relationship, they're not going to be able to sort through that themselves. They need that third party. So even if we brought to you direct complaints or whatever, I think what we need is that third party.
And I hope that you don't feel that way. because what we have here in the city of Batavia is performance management for people. And so if somebody in our community has a bad experience with one of our employees, and I believe that matter is addressed through performance management, and no one here is shy if they are in a management position to do that. So I would hope that that's the way that it's handled instead of having to hire a consultant to work through what should be. But to Alderman Barron's point, are we talking about complaints about people, or are we talking about a consultant coming in and looking at the process?
I think that will address all the above.
Yeah, mine were about process. They just couldn't understand why it was just back and forth, and they couldn't get all the answers. That's what my things were about. So that.
Why don't we just have a presentation then of exactly what the process is, and then that can be asked, and we can make sure everybody knows about it as a discussion, and if people have issues, they can come ask. We'll have a better idea, because I mean, from what I hear from you is you don't even know what the process is either. So I don't see a reason to waste the money on it.
Even if I knew what the process was, I'm not an expert in community and economic development to say that that's a good or a bad process. I wouldn't expect anybody here, if I told you a bunch of IT processes, that you would understand it and say, and make corrections to it. So look, I'm the last, we all know I'm the last one to want to spend money, but I'm willing to spend money on this because I think we've got a lot coming that we want to make sure that we do it well. So.
You don't necessarily have to be an expert within that field to be able to see whether there are deficiencies and where improvements could be made. Anytime that you have a team that's working together and you review a process and you work together, everybody listens to what improvements could be made. I worked in a factory last week. I'm not a factory worker, but I was able to contribute to a team to make improvements in building airplanes. I went from building 8 airplanes in 10 minutes to 96 airplanes in 10 minutes. And that was because of the process improvement. Again, I'm not an industrial engineer. I'm not a plant manager. I just was part of a team who came together to look at a process and improve upon it.
And I guess what my point was in the beginning was that I came in, I was new, I received feedback from you, I received feedback from Main Street, I received feedback from Chamber, I received feedback from specific businesses. We even invited certain members of the business community in to tell us what their issues were. And then we came up with a plan for the changes that we were going to make. And we're at the beginning of implementing those changes. So for me, I would not recommend hiring a consultant at this time just because of the timing of it. I'm not opposed to it, but I just don't, when we have identified problems, identified a fix to the problem, you can say, I don't think that those are the right fixes. And a consultant should come in and identify what the fixes should be. But I think that utilizing, the experience of the staff here to try to put those things in place, at least should be trusted in the first instance. And then move to hiring the consultant. Because I am concerned that if those things have a significant positive improvement, then why did we spend the money on a consultant?
Let's take 6 months and let it happen internal. Let this already proposed happen, and then in 6 months come back, and if we're not happy, if we still hear things, or if we're still having issues within the department of overloaded, can't get things through as fast as they would like to, or the applicants would like to, then we go out and we get somebody to come in and look at it. Because I'm even hearing from Scott, just listening to his description of how long it takes to put together the one consolidated letter to send somebody. There's got to be an easier way to do it. Whether it's a database that you guys use and everybody puts their stuff into it.
They do.
And,
We have the llama system.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because we don't all know the intricacies of how you guys have that set up, that might be something good for you to share with us. so that we understand what's there, and then, maybe think about ways to how you creatively market that to the person that walks through the door, whether they're doing, 150,000 square foot building, or whether they're doing, a 1,000-foot addition to a house or remodel or something, that they need to have that information up front to make the process better. I think that's what we all want, is we want the process to be better. We don't want to hear whatever the grumblings are about whatever's not right, whether it's process people, whatever it is. But if we make the process better and the public is happier with it, that's what we're here to do. And I think that's what we have to think is our goal. Abby?
Yeah. I just wanted to say that I also support moving forward now with the consultant. I think we're all saying the same thing, that we want to improve the processes. We can't improve the processes unless we have some honest feedback. And to Nick Roan's point, whether it's a valid perception or not, we're not getting honest feedback. And those of us that have received complaints we do not even want to share the complaints that we've received, just based on the person who's given it to us, because we don't have their permission. That's a perception out there, but perception is people's reality. So if we're not getting honest feedback to the places it needs to be, we need to find a channel to get honest feedback to the places it needs to be to make the proper improvements. And I don't see a way forward with that without a third party that can be objective, that can tell the community that we're listening to them and that we're going to make these things happen, that we're going to at least try something. I don't think it can hurt. I mean, best case scenario, they do reveal that, yeah, you're short staffed, you need new people. The only way you're going to convince Mark Ewer to get more people is to give him the consultant and help move that along. So, we're all saying the same thing. We're just talking about different timescales. Doing it internally, I don't think is possible. Can I recommend just a straw poll at this point on whether or not we want to move forward with a consultant now or not? Because I've heard a good split here, so it'd be nice to know which side we're on.
Before we do that, can I just make a suggestion that goes along with this? Because I think the straw poll will reveal, to move forward, the question will be the time frame: 6 months, 3 months, 2 months. I don't mind moving it out a little further if we see a few other things came up in mind. Maybe a presentation on process internally that we can understand more. Because part of it, I think, when people come to us, I don't have an answers. I've been here 10 years. I didn't know it all went into one database like that, and I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that. The other thing is, let's make immediate steps forward on the feedback loop. How can we put that on a timeline and make progress in that, which I think is going to be the first thing that we need to accomplish anyways, even for when we bring a consultant in. That's going to be part of that process, is feedback from people actually partaking. And the third thing is let's create a plan for communications to talk about what's happened and what's moving forward, and do those. So I think we have a lot to do moving forward, and the question is more, there's 4 things we can start doing. The question is more not if we're going to, it's what the timeline is along those 4 things.
I agree with you, Nick. I think that obviously we can't vote tonight whether or not we're not voting on a statement of work, because we don't have a statement of work. So I think maybe the straw poll is on, can we just get some statements of work and consultants so that we can see what it would be? And that, because that means at least that gets the ball rolling. And if we see it's going to be $1 million and take us 5 years, then my answer is no. But that gets the ball rolling, and that's what I think the straw poll could be on, is can we do that part?
Can I suggest something much easier than a straw poll? Who objects to us going and getting a couple of statements of work and a quote from consultants? All right, I think we're done with the straw poll.
Along those lines, though, those other items, how can we create a plan and follow up as far as
If no one
feedback loop,
objects, then that's
communications?
my job. You give me a list of things and then I do them.
All right, you got the list of 4 things. There you
She's
go.
got lots of notes here.
I got lots of notes.
There's more notes from this discussion than anything else.
I have a question, not a question, but it's about to be spring and then summer, and they're about to be super busy because everybody, for some reason, waits until the weather gets nice to do their permitting, and they probably should be doing it in the wintertime when it's less. So as we get into this busier season, I think we can have discussions and get feedback from our own staff about how things are working with the changes they've made with Anthony in place and with a lot of other things that they have already done as we're getting the statements of work and those things so that we have something to look at and compare with the scope of work. And then we figure out what kind of time frame we want to move for having someone look at the processes that they've already made the changes and what we can do. So that'd be the work we're talking about, doing the scope of work that we need to see happen.
Because at the end of the day, I mean, I think this is true of all of us, but we want to be the most enticing town there is for people to come do business at and to move in, to add their deck, to start a small business, to continue with a 20-year, drink coffee, continue their 20-year-old business. We want them, like, we want people to be knocking on Batavia's doors to come here, and we want to make
We do. The only thing that we have to balance that with is some of the things that we see in neighborhoods like Carriage Crest and the flooding issues that they have, and Woodland Hills and their lack of curbs. And that's because those things were done decades ago and with different standards. So the other thing that all of these departments do, and sometimes that gets perceived as not being business friendly.
Right. Let me finish my thought.
Okay.
Sorry. And I get that. Like, we all have jobs to do. Absolutely. And sometimes it's the level of communication that's done with that job, right? I'm in the business of customer service. And if somebody comes in with a complaint, I have 2 choices on how I react to that complaint. And so it's just like, I guess that's what I'm getting at too, is in this whole process, like, just how are we, what is the perception that the public has, even if they're dealing with a really unfortunate situation or a delay in permitting or stuff like that. So
we hear different things, like you say, than what is shared with us today. So that's why it's really important to bring, however you can protect people's anonymity, completely change the story or whatever. But if we don't get the feedback, it's hard to make changes. One of the things that the city did was right before COVID, we trained every single employee in the city of Batavia about customer service and conflict resolution.
It's impossible
Down to
for
the
us- if we
snowplow
don't know-
driver,
if we don't
up
know-
to the chief of police.
If we don't know about something, we can't do anything about it, obviously, because nobody tells us about it. And I know, and I understand some people are going to want to be anonymous, but we can't change certain things unless we know about it. I mean, that's really the reality of it. I mean, somebody's upset about their deck and it didn't take too long, or they failed, or whatever, but they're just, well, I'm just not going to deal with it. If we don't know about that, there's nothing we can do about it. We don't know about those situations, unfortunately.
Well, thank you for
So-
bringing that full circle, because that's the whole reason for the consultant, like, just to come in and be that third party. So
Right, but the consultant's going to
Should
be
be
there
able
for
to share that information with
the
one
consultant's going to be there for a
another,
finite period of time, looking at certain things, and they're
Yeah.
not going to know about all these things either. And so they can look at them and pinpoint, saying, okay, you know what? Here's a process issue, or here's a personality issue, or whatever they find. And those are things that certainly we can look at and correct. But that's going forward, there's no way we're going to be able to respond to complaints that we don't know about.
Right. Give me the opportunity to address if people feel that retaliatory actions have been taken against somebody. It's me. That's not going to be tolerated here.
Agreed.
I think to kind of go along with part of what Nick's ask was, is maybe break down the different permitting processes and what the best practice is for the time for that permit and that process. And then also with the process of, like your standard, with some of your standard permits, how long is it taking you to do that? And where may have something gotten bumped up? And I think, Nick, is that kind of what you're looking for, some of that information, some of that data? Like, here's how you do the process, and here's what it should be, and here's what we're currently doing, and where you're seeing those challenges.
Yeah, I mean, we do give people timeframes when they submit a permit. We do say, it's going to take X days for our first review, and if like an industrial or larger project, it's going to take another period of time for a secondary review. So we do give estimates, and we vary them based on our workload. So when we get in the middle of April, May, when we have the glut of everybody doing permits, obviously we tell them it's going to take longer so that they have some realistic timeframes for how long it's going to take to get through a process. I would rather give them a longer time frame, and then we deliver it in a shorter period of time rather than go the other way, and then they're mad. It was like, you said it was going to be 5 weeks and it took 6 weeks, or whatever the number is.
But I think some important information to detail there is how many other permits that you have doing and what's going on. And that way you can start saying, on May 30th, I was given this permit. I gave them 3 weeks out, and here's some of the things. Here's what we had because we were reviewing like 20 other permits. And then that way you can start building that data and start justifying if maybe you need another person. And that gives you some of that data of, is our process working? Is our process not working? Do it with your manual processing, but also with your automatic processing, what that time takes to get that data, to be able to see, is this working? Are we improving upon it? And even along that way, like, hey, this one took 10 hours. Is there something more that we can do? And then you can come back and say, hey, we saw this process took 10 hours. We made this little change and now it takes us 5 hours. Celebrate those changes and bring that back and show that you're identifying that and bringing it back.
Okay, we'll move that forward. And then do we want to just put this back on the agenda? First COW meeting in May to talk about it again?
May seems far out if the consultant, if information can be presented sooner.
Second one in March.
I think we're going to define
April.
consultant.
April. Okay, let's do first one in April.
It's March next
First one in
month.
April.
Tomorrow's March.
And remember, we're heading into the busy season, so it's a matter of allocating the time.
First COW meeting in April. Then you only could change one word. Okay. We will move then on to item 17, which is other. Does anybody have any others?
I have one that was brought up to me, and it was just something I told the resident that I would bring up, and I said we don't have any power or control over it, but she said she's reached a dead end with the park district. She goes to Big Woods Park all the time, and she goes to other parks where you walk around the trails and they have the dog waste stations. There's none at Big Woods Park. She wants some at Big Woods Park. I said, contact the park district. She said that she has numerous times and never gets a response, and just wants to know why there's none at Big Woods Park.
I don't know that we have the dog cleanup stations at any park. I go to Memorial Park and there aren't any there. There's just waste receptacles for me to put my own bags in.
I think that she was referencing more, when I was thinking about it, I think that she was referencing how when you go to like the dog park, there's like, you can pull the bags. She was looking for bags, I think, and places to put the poop. Being a responsible person.
Yeah.
Bring your own bag.
Yeah. Well, you can't bring bags and they're getting taxed now, So.
No.
To go buy them.
Not a tax.
Should we buy them? That's part of my vet service, is they give you a little thing of them.
Hey, it does. I got to talk to my vet then.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was just something I said I would bring up because it's not really our property or anything to talk about, but.
And they don't have any waste receptacles out there? It's just.
Oh, yeah,
or-
they've
or
got
they-
garbage cans. You
right,
just bring your own bags.
stuff, Right.
The garbage,
Yeah.
there's
She
garbage
wants
cans right
somebody
by
to
the
provide her own
softball
bags.
field.
Okay, that's what it is.
Yeah,
Labor
she's-
intensive to,
She doesn't want to
Carry a
bring
bag.
bags.
well, to have those stations and have an employee go out and reload those bag stations constantly.
And they can get messy.
We'll probably take
And
a
I don't think
Yeah.
they're at any parks other than
No, I
the
don't
dog
think so.
park. Because they're not by my park.
That's the only one I can
Yeah, the
think of
Bark
is the
Park, I
Bark
think,
Park.
maybe the only one.
Yeah. So anyway.
Others, we will move on then to executive session. I'll need a motion to go in executive session.
Second.
Hey, and Sharon. Roll call, please. Interchangeable tonight.
Malay,
Aye. Dick and Tony's.
Ewer,
Aye.
Saron,
Aye.
Pizza, please.
Vogelsinger,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Sato absent, Beck,
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
Chancet,
Aye.
Solfa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Sharon,
Throw them out.
Lehman,
Aye.
and Ayazi.
Aye.
I will see you all in executive session.
You have to go wait out in the halls.